This is the most successful character ever put on film. 8 movies, almost $8 billion at the box office, known in every country on Earth. And the reason he keeps starting over has nothing to do with any of that. It is a piece of paper, signed inside a bankruptcy, by a company that could not make rent. $7 million. That is what the film rights cost. 10 years later, Disney paid $4 billion for the company that sold them and still could not have him. So which is it? The deal of the century, or a company taken apart while it was on the floor?
I want to be careful with this one because it is the kind of story the internet has already decided. You have probably heard that Sony stole Spider-Man. I do not think that is what happened, and by the end, I think you will not either. What actually happened is stranger and more useful. 2 of the largest companies on Earth ended up sharing custody of one fictional teenager from Queens, and neither of them can walk away. That arrangement is why this character has been restarted more times than any hero in film. So today we are not asking whether the movies are good, we are asking whether the deal was fair on the day it was signed, with what was known then. Prosecution first, then the defense, and it is stronger than you expect. Then I rule.
Start with the thing almost everyone gets wrong. This was never a sale, it was a license. Marvel kept the comics, the merchandise, the cartoons, 5% of what the movies made and half of everything the toys made. One narrow slice went to Sony Motion Pictures. So the argument that follows is not about who owns Spider-Man. It is about what that one slice was worth on the 22nd of February, 1999.
The case against Sony is a case about leverage. In December 1996, Marvel filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It was not negotiating from strength. It was selling the furniture to make rent, and every buyer in Hollywood knew it. X-Men and Fantastic Four went to Fox. The Hulk went to Universal. Spider-Man went to Sony for $7 million. Exhibit A, the Raimi trilogy alone, took about $2.5 billion. Far From Home took $1.13 billion. No Way Home took $1.92 billion, against $7 million. Exhibit B, in January 2010, Sam Raimi told the studio, in his words, "I can't make your date. I can't go forward creatively." Sony did not find another director. It threw away the films, the cast, and the world, and started again, because rebooting was cheaper than losing a release date. Exhibit C, in 2009, Disney paid about $4 billion for Marvel and more than 5,000 characters, and still could not put Spider-Man in its own films. It had to negotiate for him in 2015, and again in 2019, when the whole arrangement publicly collapsed for a fortnight. And there is a 4th exhibit, because holding the rights is only half the charge. Sony spent those years building a universe around a character it was not allowed to use. Morbius took $167 million and became an internet joke. Madame Web took $100 million and won 3 Razzies. Kraven the Hunter took $62 million against a budget of at least $110, the worst opening the studio had had in years. By February this year, the studio chief confirmed that whole universe is being restarted from scratch. 3 films, none of them allowed to feature the one character audiences actually came for. Now the other side, and it is stronger than the internet admits.
1. In 1999, the superhero film was not a proven genre. Batman and Robin had just been a punchline. There was no Marvel Studios, there was no MCU. $7 million for an unproven adaptation of a comic owned by a bankrupt publisher was not obviously cheap. It was a bet, and Sony was one of the few willing to place it. 2. That money and the money from Fox and Universal is part of what carried Marvel out of Chapter 11. There is a version of this story where nobody buys anything and there is no Marvel left to acquire in 2009. 3. The 2002 film is the reason Spider-Man is a cinema character at all. It opened to $114.8 million across 3,615 theaters, a record at the time. And Marvel took 5% of that and half the toys, having spent nothing and risked nothing. 4. In 2019, Disney asked to co-finance the film's 50-50. Sony refused, walked, and then came back and gave Disney about a quarter of the money for about a quarter of the stake. That is not a company sitting on a stolen asset. That is a company that owns something being asked to hand over half of it.
3 things this court will not pretend to know. 1. Everybody quotes a clause saying Sony must start a new film every few years or the rights revert. We could not verify it. The common version fails against the sources, and the specific number people repeat traces back to leaked documents. It is left out of this verdict, and you should be suspicious of anyone who states it as fact. 2. The 5% and the 50-50 merchandise split are consistent across sources, but they are reported terms, not a primary document, and the deal was modified in 2011. 3. $7 million only looks obviously wrong once you know what happened next.
So here is where I land. On theft, not guilty. The price was defensible in 1999 with what was known in 1999, and the people calling it a robbery are grading a bet by its result instead of its odds. But on what came after, guilty, not of a crime, of refusing to let go, Sony did not steal Spider-Man. Sony simply will not let anyone else raise him, and that is why this character keeps starting over.
As always, the court hears the appeal.
$7 million looks absurd now, but in 1999, with Marvel bankrupt and superhero movies still a gamble, I think it was a defensible price, not theft. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with refusing to sell a valuable license, but if you keep resetting the character mainly to preserve control instead of letting the best creative home use him, hoarding is a fair word.
Given Marvel was in bankruptcy and the superhero genre was a gamble, the price seems completely defensible for that time. I have to disagree with the hoarding verdict, as Sony has consistently and profitably used the license, which is the opposite of letting an asset stagnate. Refusing to sell your most valuable and actively used property isn't a crime. It's the very definition of ownership.
The verdict is right, but I would push back on one word. Hoarding implies something unusual, and Sony has behaved exactly as any owner behaves with an asset it believes in. The uncomfortable part of this case is not the conduct of either company. It is that a bankruptcy filing from 1996 is still deciding, 30 years later, which stories get made and when. That is not a villain. That is just how durable a contract can be.
Appeal noted. The ruling stands. With one amendment, the hoarding charge is not really about Sony. It is about what happens to any asset that two owners can both veto. The lesson is not about superheroes. Marvel did not lose Spider-Man because it was outsmarted. It lost him because it needed cash on a Tuesday, and the person across the table did not. Every founder who has raised money in a bad month knows that table. So when you are the one who needs the money, price the asset, not the moment. The $7 million was survivable. The 27 years was never priced at all.
Business on trial. New case every week.